Hey, and welcome everybody. Hey, it's a great Thursday. We are less than 48 hours away from Bedlam. Matter of fact, about 48 hours from now, we will know the outcome of the last football Bedlam for some time. I don't want to say forever because I think, 10, 12 years from now, once those non-conference contracts run out, they might consider it again. A lot of things can happen in a decade. And, Sooners talking a little smack. You're afraid to play us. You're whatever. Well, we're going to talk to Jason Watkins here a little bit, Hall of Fame, network guy. Yeah, we'll disagree on some things, but I think we'll come to some agreements on some things as well. Kind of like we'll get along as well, at least as Mike Gundy and Brian Bosworth. Brian Bosworth taking his vitamin C with an adult beverage. Yeah, vitamin C. Oh, gosh. That cracked me up because Bosworth, of course, was the king of roids. Matter of fact, a little story. Let's see, what year was – I'll ask Jason here in a second. Whatever year it was that Stoops' first year, he took him from a losing record and they might have had a winning record because they went to a bowl game that year because I remember – I don't know. We'll talk to Watkins here in a second. Of course, he's got shows every day. He's got about 58 shows. I'm going to ask him to let you know about all of them. But he probably knows the Sooners as well as anybody, which is why we're having him on. And we'll have a little Bedlam fun, no doubt about it. Jason and I, we have an agreement to disagree sometimes, and that's fine. Because I can argue with Jason. Jason can argue with me because we're rational people. Now, there are people out there on both sides of the Bedlam fence who are not, they're not negotiable. It's non-negotiable with them. And that makes Bedlam fun. That's what makes Bedlam fun. And just as I'm looking forward to Bedlam so much in 2 days, yeah, I hate for it to end as well. Especially now, let's be honest. Cowboys had not been real competitive from World War II up until about the late 90s, mid to late 90s, when Les Miles came in and beat them twice in a row. And I think there was a point there where the Cowboys won 5 of 7, late 1900s to early 2000s. And to be honest with you, even though the Sooners have still dominated the series under Gundy, those of you who are a little younger don't know this, but man, we used to get beat by like 50. It'd be like, 10-7 at halftime. We'd get all excited, and then by the end of the third quarter, it was like 40-7. And so, I can't. When I moved here, it was, not a lot of fun. Not a lot of fun getting smoked like that. And the man himself joins us right now. Look, he's already busy. He's already probably typing up, letters to recruits or something like that, telling them how much NIL he can give them through the show. He's going to funnel it through the show. It's like, what do you call it? Laundering money, right? So he's going to do it through the big time show there. Hey, Jason, first of all, appreciate your joining us. And, hey, let's talk about Bedlam, the last one for a while. I think they'll get it together. But to Mike Gundy, he probably won't be coaching then, so it'll be okay. He doesn't. He certainly. And if I had the record he did against Oklahoma, I'd be real quiet about Bedlam too. But the fans are all fired up about it. You're fired up. I'm fired up. 48 hours from now, we'll know who won the game. But talk about it. What your keys are for the Oklahoma State game for football the last time, probably for about 10 to a dozen years.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the money there. I don't think that I would say 10 or 12 years would probably do it for sure. And if Gundy doesn't leave a little sooner, I should say, but listen, I think it's a shame that the game's not going to continue. But that being said, I think it makes this one a little bit more important, doesn't it? His bragging rights are going to be spread out for a while. So that's
I can already, Jason, I can already see it. I can already see it from some of my Sooner friends. If Oklahoma State pulls this one out, Oklahoma State fans are going to have bragging rights for a while because they won't play for a while. So bring it up, and I know what we'll hear next, like 91-7-14, or the
Oh yeah,
all
you'll
time
always have
record.
that. Yeah, you'll
The
always
all-time record.
have that argument, but I think that the best argument to have is the last winner. I know all of last year when they were having to go through, the giveaway game for Lincoln. So
Yeah,
and listening to what was going on, on Twitter. You know how Twitter is too. It's a cesspool anyway. So it makes it even worse. But look, man, I think it's what makes college football really cool, is that you do have that back and forth that goes on between fan bases. We always Oklahoma fans have always had it with Texas and with you guys. So it's something that you enjoy. You're already missing out on that Nebraska one that used to be a big deal for OU as well. And so you just you really kind of hope that this thing will come back around sooner than later. My guess is it probably stays on the shelf for a while. But I think as far as this weekend goes, I mean, at the first of the season, I think we all kind of thought that OU would probably blow through this game pretty easily. And I still, there's some part of me that believes that they're going to win either way. But I will say that the game, the way that Ollie Gordon has played over these last 4 or 5 weeks since Gundy kind of came out of hibernation and started coaching them up again, spending more time at the offices. I think that it's been big time. I mean, he's averaging. He's already over 1,000 yards through 8 games, 1087. I mean, he's looking like he's probably gonna flirt with 1,700 yards, I would think. Depending on how everything goes this week. And now the good news is that Oklahoma's pretty good against the run, although they hadn't really been great against it the last few weeks. So I think the main thing for OU to win, you really want to get out there and kind of put it on Alan Bowman to beat you. You got to find a way to slow down that running game enough that you force Alan Bowman to beat you. And I think that the other thing would be to kind of jump out in front, and judging by the way that they've played the last couple of weeks and the way that the game's been called offensively, not to say that they've been terrible, but it hasn't been great. And it seems like they've failed to get some big shots and stuff like that. My thought is that you're going to want to win the rushing battle, I think, but I think you also need to do that by probably setting it up with the pass if you're OU. And that's just kind of where I feel like that their best option is, because if they're going to give up any points, it seems like OSU is real risk reward type. They're going to bring a lot of pressure. They're going to bring those safeties up. I think you need to make sure that you get them back off that line, in order to be able to kind of beat them. And if you can get out in front of them early, I think they're going to have a hard time playing catch up.
Yeah, agreed. The thing about Oklahoma, and this is just me as a fan or as an observer watching the game the last 45 years.
Right.
There have been times where Oklahoma State had, pretty decent talent and matched up against Oklahoma, might even be favored.
Sure.
And Oklahoma, just like last year, everything can happen wrong for Oklahoma State does. Sooners capitalize on it. And that game's over before it even started, And
right.
That's what I don't want to see. I really don't want to. I mean, if I have to see it, I want to see the Sooners puke it up. But I'd rather see a great game that gets to the fourth quarter fairly close, like we had 2 years ago.
Oh, man, and it was a good game. It was a good game. I mean, I don't want to really talk about it that much, but no, I'm just kidding. It was a great game, and came down to like the last play, really. Caleb Williams is kind of doing his thing down there by the goal line. They pick up a big, I'll forever feel like they were running the same play over and over again for whatever reason. But, that kid is something else. He's definitely a clutch performer type. And I think that it's a lot of fun to watch the game. And it's going to be rowdy there. I think that's the biggest equalizer that you have is Boone Pickens Stadium is crazy. And particularly for this game, it's one of the toughest venues in the country to play in, particularly when they're playing good. And, so I don't think that's the other part that you're going to have to really combat if you are OU, and why it would help a lot to get out in front early and kind of, take the crowd out of it a little bit as well. Because if you allow them to stay in the game for very long, it gets down to that fourth quarter, and now we're talking electricity running through that place. Yeah, it's and I mean, what a great place. I mean, one thing I'll say about, as much as I give you guys a hard time, you and Cody, but there's not many places in the country that gets as wild as it does inside of Boone Pickens Stadium whenever, especially when these two guys get together. That's another reason why I think it's such a shame. It's just I think the fans really get into this, and it's really supposed to be about the fans for in college football, and I feel like it's kind of gone away from that, and I hate that.
And we're losing rivalries all over the country. It's not just here or the Big 12 or anything like that. But and when Mike Gundy says, look, we'd go ahead and play you, but you guys left the conference. So when you did that, and here's where you and I disagree a little bit. I know we had done it before, but the thing is, it's a real thing because the Big 12 has 3 non-conference games, and most of those are set up 10 to a dozen years in advance, as you know. Not that they couldn't get out of one of those, whereas the Sooners are now going into conference that gives you only 8 conference games. You get that extra game about a week or 2 before the end of the season to kind of rest up your guys, which I really like that. I'd kind of like to see everybody have to do 9 conference games out of the 12. Go ahead and take two early, kind of as, exhibition or whatever you want to call them, and then do what the SEC does and take that last non-conference game about, the 10th or 11th game of the season. I actually like that. Unfortunately,
I just wish they didn't do the get-right game at that time of the year.
What's that?
I wish it was a better game a lot of times, though, those non-conference.
But then again, at least the other conferences are playing in conference games that time of year. And not all the SEC teams do it on the same weekend. So they 1 or 2, 3 weekends, they kind of mix it up. So it's almost like, hey, I'm not going to watch Bama this week. They're playing Casper the Ghost, or I'm not going to watch. One of my sons is running off to Tuscaloosa on Saturday. He'll be pulling for the Bayou Bengals, though, and we'll get him on live on Saturday and talk about that a little bit. And I want to get your opinion on some of the bigger games. But first of all, what do you think of going into Bedlam? Do you have any kind of feelings at all either way?
I think that I'm the OU fan in me doesn't allow me to pick anybody but OU, but I think it's not. I do feel like it's going to be a lot closer than I did earlier in the season. I feel like it could come down to the fourth quarter, but I feel like OU probably pulls out, maybe wins 35-21.
Yeah, maybe, I was kind of thinking about this earlier when I was getting you on. I've talked about, does this game need to be played? And of course, on the OU side, most people think it needs to be played. The media certainly wants to be played.
Sure.
Oklahoma State fans, there are some that I've run into go, we need to play the Sooners. It's, just a great game. And now that we're competitive, not saying we're going to win 50% of the games, but it has been a lot more competitive. We've had, even a couple of Oklahoma State losses here in the last 20 years have been overtime games,
Yeah, look, I agree with that. I agree with that.
Yeah, it's a better game now.
I think that
now with Bosworth.
Go ahead.
Well, go ahead. Go ahead, Jason.
No, I was just going to say, I think that this game probably gives OSU an edge that it wouldn't have otherwise. When you got to kind of keep up, I feel like not playing this game is going to hurt you in recruiting. I really do. If you're not proving that you're staying on that level, at least to compete with the level of the SEC, how are you going to, it seems like if you're going to get up for this, for anything, you have to get up for this one, and so I think it's one of those games that you kind of compete and work towards the whole season, particularly if you were able to, like, even after the fact, to say, yeah, right towards the end of the season, maybe even right now, to have this game or last game of the season type of deal where you guaranteed that you've got a tough one. If you're in contention for the Big 12 championship, or you're going to play in the Big 12 championship, you could lose some luster if you lose it, but not necessarily. I think that if you even play in a tight game against a tough SEC opponent, you're going to look good going into that game. And you know, particularly with the way that the playoff is going to be expanded and stuff, I think it would help OSU. I don't think that it hurts. Now, I get it. I'm not coming from the same angle that some of you guys are. I understand that. But I just feel like I think it could be a mistake on the part of OSU to not want to do this anymore, just because of the fact that I think that, you know, it takes away some of that edge. It takes away some of that, you know, getting ready for something bigger than what the conference even is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, let me ask you this. Going in the SEC, because I had a couple people today who knew you're going to be on the show and didn't wanted to ask me, but ask you too.
Yeah.
If you had to, you know, if I made you put on your or get your glass ball and predict the future, starting next season, 10 years from now, who has the better overall win record, staying in their respective conferences, OSU or OU?
I think it's obviously a tougher goal for Oklahoma. But here's the thing. I mean, if you look at the SEC this season, you know, it's very top heavy, even more so than probably normally. You know, I think you have some middle of the road teams that, you know, you look at Florida, they're probably they're the next tier down from your Georgia's clearly at the top, I think, and then you've got Alabama right below that. But I think that after that, you kind of look at LSU, Ole Miss, even and Florida and Tennessee are probably another tier from there, right? So
yeah.
I think that Oklahoma and Texas come in a good position in view of the fact of where they're recruiting at. And I mean, since Coach Venables has showed up, he's been in the top 10. He salvaged the top 10 class right after he got to town. Then he was able to he would have the number 4 class in the country according to 247 last season. He's trending towards a top five class this season with the best defensive class in Oklahoma history, particularly in terms of, you know, having 6 blue chip defensive line athletes, you know, and starting with David Stone, and then, you know, you've got guys like Nigel Smith and Denny Okoye, and, you know, David Stone's running mate out there, Jaden Jackson from IMG. These guys are the real deal. You know, I think there's an outside chance that you still could see a guy like Williams Nwaneri end up flipping his commitment to Missouri and going to Oklahoma as well. I don't know that that's the case. I don't even know that that's something that they're looking at this point. What I do know is that they're loading up on talent in Oklahoma. They're going to always have this pipeline into Texas because they're going to continue playing Texas schools and in Texas. So I think that it's, you know, when you have A&M and Texas still on the schedule, at least A&M is going to be every other year. But I feel like I feel like they're going to be fine. Is it going to be as easy to win them? No, I don't think so. But I struggle to think that it's going to be a lot easier for Oklahoma State too. You know, you have Utah coming in, who's definitely been the class of the Pac-12 for the past couple of years. They have the best coach in the Pac-12, and then you've got Coach Prime, he's shaking up the recruiting thing and you know, upsetting that apple cart a lot more than people want to give him credit for. I know they haven't won as many games as the haters want to, you know, kind of get on him about not winning a bunch of games. They won 1 last year. So they're already 400% better. You know what I mean? They're still going to have.
Yeah, they're going to get bowl eligible most likely.
Absolutely.
They got to win this weekend.
They definitely got to win this weekend, and then they're going to have another tough one. You know, look, it's not like it's going to be easy, but even if you win 5, that's a 500% uptick in what they did from a year ago. They've gone through some attrition, and I think that using the portal, it is, and as much as Coach Prime did, I think that it's a little risky to go that big on it, you know, because I mean, what did they change out, like 70 something players or something like that, Greg? It was a lot.
Yeah, it was almost an entire flip.
Just about. Yeah, I think they had like 12 or 15 guys that they didn't flip. But again, it was a 1-11 team, so I mean, it's not that like I really blame him for doing so. In the end, they're going to have to get a little better. They need to definitely get better in the trenches. But I think, again, that's why I think Oklahoma is going to be set up to win in the SEC, is because of the fact that they have a coach that knows how important it is to win in the trenches, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. You're going to have to be able to do that. They're still getting top level quarterbacks. Jackson Arnold, coming in. You've got Michael Hawkins coming in next year. You've got Kevin Sperry the year after that. Look, it's they're going to continue to be, and Oklahoma is not okay with not competing. So if I had to guess, I would still pick OU. I know a lot of people think that's probably crazy because you just look at the SEC and you think best conference in the country. Oklahoma has a winning record all time against every team in the SEC. So, I don't know that it, and nobody would accept it being any different either. I'm not saying they're going to go in and dominate the conference because right now they are not that. But I think that next season would probably be, I don't think it matters what happens this year. I think that next season you're going to see them probably go through a few growing pains there, right? It's a new conference. You got to figure it out. But I also think that they have, they've got some winnable games. Even the Alabama game, I mean, they're going to have a new quarterback as well. And we'll kind of see what happens with, but
Jason, you'll notice like in the Big 12 this year, the four teams that came in had really bad records against the rest of them.
No doubt about it.
But I think a lot of that's due to the depth in recruiting that they didn't have as G5s, whereas Oklahoma might have some growing pains, but I mean, they've been recruiting great. They've got the depth. That shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think that, they've got the road game at LSU. That's going to be a night game. I mean, I would never pencil that in as a win because it's just LSU, and they're going to have a new quarterback too. But winning at Death Valley at nighttime, shoot, nobody does it. You know what I mean? Even Alabama doesn't do it very often. So I would think that one's going to be a tough one. You've got another road game at I would say that if you look at the road game at Auburn, they always say weird things happen out on the plains, right? But again, yeah, I think you're right about what you said. I mean, when you start looking at like UCF, for instance, I think that UCF is going to be a pain in the butt in the Big 12 moving forward, but I think it's going to take a couple of years of recruiting and getting that Power 5 depth. They've been recruiting around 70 in the country, right? And as much as a lot of people think that OSU is kind of underachieved with its recruiting, they're in the 40s at their worst. You know what I mean? That's as bad as it gets for OSU. So yeah. I think that talent-wise, yeah, I think that OU is going to stack up, and I know Texas is. I mean, they win the offseason freaking championship every year. You know what I mean? So it's as far as talent is concerned, I think they're going to be right on par. I mean, there's only two teams in the SEC that out-recruit Oklahoma and Texas, and it's Alabama and Georgia. And then and LSU's right up there with them. But again, I still think that they're gonna slot in right in that, that area right behind Georgia and Alabama, probably LSU to start with. But I don't think that it's going to take long before they're competing for all of it. Just for the simple fact that Oklahoma fans wouldn't allow it, and I don't think that the school will allow it.
Hey, Jason, before we go any further, I got a couple more questions for you. I want to have you tell everybody, where they can get hold of you, watch your shows, because you've got about 58 shows. I was telling everybody. I mean, you're tied in with different guys on different shows. You got your post-game show, your pre-game show. You got game shows every week. Then you got other shows with Coach and other guys. It's like I flip the channels often on YouTube, and I'm like finding you live somewhere 90% of the day.
Yeah, well, I definitely try to get on as much as I can. We're growing quite a bit at Hall of Fame College Football. You can find us, obviously, it's at CFB-pod on YouTube. The best way to find us, and I'm going to do a better job of updating this website too, but I want to get our schedule on there when we're going to have some people. I do have a live stream going on tonight. It'll be at 10 Eastern time. We're going to get into it's Coach I won't be with us tonight, but we do a lot of stuff with the Fan Addict Sports Network. That's Coach I. They're a bunch of Georgia guys. So we're going to actually be putting out their rankings up to he's got a ranking system that's kind of similar to what the CFP, or I guess it's his version of like his formula of how he ranks them or whatever. But we're going to put that up against the CFP and kind of see where that goes. And then I think we're going to have Locked On Oklahoma State's Cody Stovall on with us as well, where he'll be able to come on and we might talk a little trash to each other, kind of break down the game a bit. But it'll be probably later in the show. But yeah, we'll be on tonight at it'll be 10 o'clock Eastern time, so 9 there in Oklahoma. And yeah, you know, it's try to get on as much as I can. We do a lot of work with them. Hey, the Big 12 Mafia guys, I think we're going on with them tomorrow. I think you're on that show, right?
Yeah, I think I'm joining you on that when
yeah, so
was that like 4 o'clock Central?
Yeah,
4
Central,
5 Eastern, right?
Okay, yeah, 5 Eastern time, right. Yeah, so yeah, and I love going on with those guys too, man. They're a good group, you know. So it'll be fun to get on there. And so yeah, listen, I'm excited about it and looking forward to the weekend and the rest of the season. You know, it's crazy that the football season's already almost over and we're talking basketball. Right. I did want to talk to you a little bit about Coach Knight, man.
Yeah, that was that's a tough deal, you know. And Coach Knight had his detractors, obviously, and in some of it, he brought it upon himself. But I'm going to tell you what, he was the best guy to me. I told him a story when we first met about how I was a little Purdue fan in the early 70s when he was at Indiana, and I was screaming at him. So the next time I saw him was about 6 months later, and he said, "Hey, you're that Purdue guy, right?" It's like, well, I used to be about 40 years ago, but yeah, Coach Knight was always good to me. And the first time I had him on the show, he had just got the Tech job. And Pat, his son, was head coach at Toledo, actually his assistant at Toledo. And Pat called me and said, "Hey, I'm going with my dad down to Tech." And said, you know, he said, "Hey, we're going to need some help recruiting Texas because, you know, we've had some guys from Texas and Indiana, but we didn't recruit it a lot. Right. So he's counting on your help. Wants to know how he can help you." I go, "Hey, I'd love you." Back then it was a Wednesday night show. I said, "I'd love to have you on." Thursday, and he was so good to me. I mean, he spent 5 minutes telling me how to change a choke in his shotgun because the birds in Lubbock were bigger and tougher than the ones in Bloomington. So, of course, he married a Oklahoma small school
exactly like
coach Karen Edgar. And but anyway, the next day, my boys were little then; they're now adults. But I took them to practice, and Eddie came out and he stopped. He looked at me, goes, "Hey, did you have Coach Knight on your show the other day, or Bob, or whatever?" He said. I said, "I did." He goes, "How was he?" I go, "He's surprisingly very, very charming." He looked at me he rolled his eyes. He goes, "He can be." So
well, I know they had a little issues between.
They did. You read Season on the Brink, I guess, right?
Yes.
But yeah, when they were at Kentucky and Indiana, they had some issues, and they at Oklahoma State there were a couple of times where Bob got his butt kicked, and I went to the
I remember those games.
Yeah, well, I went to the post-game press conference one time, and he had very little to say in his opening statement. He said, "Well, we came to play basketball. Oklahoma State came to kick our ass." And so Bob was a very colorful guy. He's had Alzheimer's. He's been fighting for about 5 or 6 years. And I know what that's like because my dad did too, a really horrible disease. And so he's in a better place.
Yeah, you know, and the first year I covered Tech for a few years, you know, on football and basketball and stuff, and it was right around the time when I think he was in his second year, was my first year covering the program, and maybe third year was my first year covering the program. It was the year they went to the Sweet 16 after Andre Emmett left, and Ronald Ross and actually they played Oklahoma State in the Big 12 championship game that year. I remember it was just such a freaking amazing game, and you had Ross.
Do you remember what they said after halftime?
What's that?
Eddie got in foul trouble late in the first half, so he went to zone, which he almost never did, right? Zone's a 4-letter word. So after halftime, they come out, bring their teams out, and Bob came out after Eddie, walks over to Eddie on the sideline and whispers something to him. Post-game press conference, I just had to ask first, like, "Coach, what did Coach Knight say to you at the beginning of the second half?" He said, "You know, Mr. Ivan's rolling over in his grave watching you play zone, right?" And
You
that's the
know.
other thing about Coach Knight was he had such reverence for Mr. Iba,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. He
and
was a
Bob
historian.
Knight
He was
was
a
one of the
historian. He loved
great
the game
great
of
guy.
basketball.
He just had a temper, you know.
He did. He did. And I think that a lot of it, everything that happened at Indiana at the end there, and there was so much negative press because before you think about it, when especially in the 70s and the 80s, I mean, they were dominating and nobody was giving him bad press. And so when all that kind of he was able to get away with so much and everybody thought it was just colorful. I think that once the 90s came around and he's still there or whatever, and still doing his thing, and it kind of got old for a lot of people, and particularly Miles Brand, who of course ended up at the NCAA. But
Right.
once he started feeling like he was backed into a corner, I think that and whenever he started feeling like there were certain publications for sure that were never going to give him the benefit of the doubt, that they didn't give him enough respect even. I think that turned him even more that way. He was always explosive, his stuff with his teams and things like that. But I think if you talk to his players and like I can always think about Ronald Ross and him being a walk-on who ends up winning Big 12 Player of the Year as a senior, and taking that team all the way to the Sweet 16. And they were an eyelash away from beating those Pittsnoggle West Virginia guys. Great freaking basketball game, and he beat up on UCLA and Aaron Aflalo and those guys. And that was really their last nice run for Coach Knight, before he got out of there. Honestly, I just felt like it was, and my first time to meet him, or my first time to deal with him, I guess, was my first year in Hobbs. And I was over there to watch Ronald. He was a freshman. And
oh yeah, I remember Ronald Ross for sure.
Yeah, and well, he was from Hobbs. So I was over there to watch that. And the first question gets asked, and they were playing New Mexico State, as a matter of fact. First question gets asked, they're winning by 20, only end up winning it by a couple. So he's pissed. And you can hear him screaming at his team from inside the interview room there at the Spirit Arena. He comes in there, he's still hot. He's still hot. First question gets asked of him, and he goes off. Poor Jeremy Fowler. He just ate him alive. So and I'd seen him do this on television, but I'd never been in the room. And this is a big man we're talking about,
Oh, he's intimidating.
Very much so. So it's I kind of got a chuckle out of it, and he kind of started snarling at me a little bit. And me being a military vet, it didn't really bother me so much, but I kind of got a chuckle out of just how pissed he was. Fast forward to at the end of it, by the time I left the Midland paper by that time, and we're at this the first rounds are in Tucson, and they're getting ready to play UCLA, and it came up about he was up for the job, or they were thinking about him on the short list at Tennessee when Bruce Pearl got the job. And I asked him about it because the guy that asked the first question of the press conference didn't. And he kind of blew me off and was like, well, I was talking to another coach one time about there's just certain jobs you would never take. And he just goes quiet. And I was like, what does that mean? And he goes, well, Jason, if you can't get that off of what, you can't get an answer to your question off of what I just said. I was like, well, you didn't answer me. And he says, well, like I said, if you can't get the answer you're needing off of what I just said, I said, Coach, have you talked to Tennessee or not? And he was like, he said, Jason, like I said, Coach, I'm not going to let this go. And he goes, he kind of gets a little, you can see him turning red. And he starts to say something again. I said, Coach, it's a yes or no answer. All you got to say is if you've spoken to him or not. That's all I want to know. And he says, no, I haven't talked to him and I don't want the job. And I was like, okay. And I handed the mic out. Well, Bill Plaschke kind of hits me on the shoulder over there, and first time I'd ever met him too. But it's funny because we get back in the back afterwards, it's over with, and I feel this big paw hit the back of my neck. And he's, you son of a so. And he was like, and I was like, what? I was like, hey, man, I'm over here in front of the national media too. You think this is the last job I want? He was like, he was like, and we were okay by then, you know, because we had talked so much and stuff like that. But he was like, damn it. He go, and I was like, what, have you been talking to him? And he goes, well, off the record, kind of, you know, but he goes, but can't do it
He's
now.
probably trying to get his contract up.
He was, and that's what he did. He did that one time with UNM, and it pissed him off that UNM kind of the Albuquerque Journal had kind of raked him over the coals about using UNM to get more money from Indiana, and so
they ended up getting Steve Alford then, right?
Later on down the line, they did. I think that was the time that they hired. I want to say it was what's his name? He does Big 12 basketball now. That coached at St. John's. Man, why am I forgetting that guy?
Yeah, Fran Fraschilla.
Fran Fraschilla.
We're gonna have him on the show in 2 weeks, by the way.
Yeah, Fran. Yeah, and Fran's a good dude, man. He's a good dude. He got into some trouble when he got to New Mexico, but I always liked Fran though. But anyway, yeah, he was like, damn it. He goes, why are you pushing me like that in there? I said, man, because you cannot be trying to embarrass me like that, coach. I was like, we're in front of a bunch of national guys. I'm trying to get other jobs too, buddy.
That reminds me of there's only one coach that's been more intimidating to me than Bob Knight, that whenever I'd interview him, I would tiptoe more than I normally do. I would be on eggshells, and that would be Gene Cady. And Gene Cady, of course, folks know he played for the Steelers in pro football. He's a solid dude.
I had no idea.
He's solid,
but he always looked like he was mean.
Oh, he can be. Listen, on it was like a Tuesday night. Oklahoma State hosted them in the preseason NIT, and if you win, of the 8 teams, if you win, the 4 teams go to Madison Square Garden, right? And it's Big Country's freshman year.
Oh man!
And he had never been on a plane before in his life. So he was a little worried about going to New York if they beat Purdue. Well, they beat Purdue pretty good. And Byron Houston, you'll remember him, was a really great player back then, played in the NBA for the Sonics and for the Golden State Warriors. But Byron had gotten cut that summer from the Pan Am team. And guess who the Pan Am coach was? Gene Cady. And I had talked to Byron earlier that week and got a story out there, and I guess Gene read it. And in the post game, I said, Coach, Byron had 32 points and 18 rebounds tonight. Do you think he had anything to prove to you about cutting him on the Pan Am team? He smacked his hand down on the table. He said, God damn, he said, you guys pissed Byron off, and look what he did to me tonight. I just laughed. Well, later on, of course, I grew up a Purdue fan, and he didn't know it. And I guess Frank Kendrick, the assistant, told him. Later on, down on the floor, he comes up to me and said, hey, I apologize. He goes, half of that was for show. He goes, Byron's a great player. I obviously made a mistake. And well, we've been friends ever since then. But, you know, it's just crazy. Some of those guys just don't know how to turn it off sometimes.
Yeah, and I don't think that was necessarily Coach Knight, though. I think that he could turn it off. You know, he was one of those guys that he would, you know, he definitely sometimes in front of the cameras, he was going to do what he did. And, you know, there were certain people that he certainly would not talk to. When I ended up at the Albuquerque Journal after I left Midland, Texas, and he wouldn't speak to him. He actually won he broke the record for most wins over Dean Smith in Albuquerque. So they were trying to get a story. He would not speak to him. And I'd gotten a hold of old Randy, his old SID there, to see if he would talk to me. And he did, but he wasn't willing to speak to anybody else that had been at the Journal at that time. And it was only because I had worked with him and he trusted me before that I was able to get anything out of him. And then I ended up talking to Ronald Ross and stuff like that as well. But yeah, it was one of those things where it's just kind of, he didn't forget people that did him wrong. That was for sure. I still remember the old quote about, he hoped they buried him upside down so his critics could kiss his ass.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I guess we'll find out in the next couple of days, huh?
Yeah. But I've got great memories of Coach Knight. I mean, like I said, he definitely it came at a good time for me, as I was coming through and growing up into the business as far as being a journalist and stuff. And I just, he was good to me. He was good to me, even though, he could be rough. He's definitely rough around the edges, and he would let you know if he didn't like something you wrote or something you said. But I tell you, he was a fair guy if you were fair with him, and I think that we had a pretty good relationship overall, and I think he knew that if you were good. I think one of the bigger things was if you were good to his kids, he was going to be good to you. And I think that most of the guys that I knew, weren't really going to tear up a kid or whatever. And I think that, I just remember that game, going back to that year, that senior year for Ronald Ross, and it was John Lucas's senior year too there at Oklahoma State. What a basketball game in that championship game, Oh, it was unbelievable. And I mean, they just went back and forth at each other. I remember Oklahoma State winning it, and it was just such a tight game. But then they both ended up, having a good tournament as well. But I just remember, I think it was you guys that knocked out Kansas that year, though, right? You knocked Kansas out in the semis, yeah.
So I believe that's right. Yeah, I believe that's right.
I thought that was I knew it wasn't because I was pretty sure
Kansas is always in there somewhere, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah, of course, and that was right after Coach Self got there. So it was, he of course he was killing it. But yeah, listen, I thought that it was a great, just one of those amazing tournament runs that I got to go on with them. It was just a lot of fun going through that conference tournament, and then, pretty much expected that they were going to get knocked out. If not in the first round, then in the second round, because they had number 2 Gonzaga with Ronnie Turiaf and Adam Mortensen and all those guys. Or Morrison, I mean. So they were. That was and Ronald Ross and I think it was Jarius Jackson was his name. I think they combined for like 68 or something like that, and Ronald had like 40. And they end up winning that one. So then, and then he got to, Ronald being from New Mexico got to go play in the pit after that in the Sweet 16. And they almost pulled that one off too against an unbelievably good West Virginia team. So,
I don't travel. Yeah, I don't travel near as much as I used to, like the NCAA tournament. I'm having my sons do more of that. They can get around faster than me, and I can still talk to them on the, show and stuff. But I do miss those days. I love that Final Four year for Oklahoma State. And of course, Kelvin went the next year, and I saw Kelvin at one of the things that morning I took my sons to, and he's like, hey, we might be back here next year. Kelvin's a guy I always got along with great. Obviously, he's doing a great job at Houston, and I don't imagine they will have quite the learning curve that their football teams have, the Big 12.
Yeah, no, they're going to be real good, right? They're going to be real good. Kelvin Sampson's such a good coach, man. He's such a good coach. I think it's
well, he is, and Kelvin's going to take over too, and he'll be fine. Kelvin since he's about 5 or 6 years old, and it's going to be a lot of fun watching him coach. We've had him on the show a bunch.
Yeah, man, I'm excited for the season. I'm not ready for football to be over with just yet, though. I was saying it got so quick. It just kind of seemed to go by so fast.
Exactly. We waited and waited for it.
Yeah.
We waited and waited for it. It got here. Now it's almost gone. So it's kind of like fall weather we don't get in Oklahoma. It goes from hot to cold overnight, and kind of like some of that middle weather. Hey, before I let you go, tell folks again how they can watch your shows. And I say shows plural because you've got a number of them.
Yeah. Make sure that you jump on with us every Tuesday night. We are on at 8:30 Eastern time. It's at CFB-pod. That's a Hall of Fame college football podcast. Hall of Fame college football with Jason and the coach is what you could put in, but it's at CFB-pod. You'll find us on YouTube. If you go to hofmedia.us, you'll definitely find our channel there. And then I'm always on Twitter as well at JW_HOF. You can find us on Saturday nights on the Fanatic. They have the Saturday night snap count. It's a recap show. Generally starts around 10 Eastern time, right around the time that all the rest of the games are starting to finish up anyway. We go through the day's action and stuff. You can find it on my channel, and generally you can also find it. It's at the Fanatic Sports Network. Make sure you guys get out there and check that one out. Hey, look, like I said, I'll be on the Big 12 Mafia and Holy Rivals show tomorrow, along with you. So looking forward to that as well. And yeah, man, I appreciate you having me on, Swain.
Well, I appreciate you joining us. And Yeah, I love that Saturday wrap up show. I watch it instead of anything on ESPN or Fox just because it's better. You guys are more in depth and a lot less BS, right?
Yeah, man, we have a lot of fun on that show too. But yeah, it's
You do.
he ends up getting a lot of guys from a lot of places. I seem to be on there every weekend, but I mean, he's got guys that that's one thing I like about Coach I is that he has connections to programs and stuff all over the country. JJ Kitchen will show up sometimes from the pit. From Pitt, he's got a pit show.
Yeah, he's good.
Yeah, I like JJ, man. He's a lot of fun. And then you've got Razorback Zach comes on the show quite a bit. He's got a guy, trying to remember his name. He's always on with from Penn State. Just there's a lot of guys that pop in and show up, even some of the HBCU guys that cover HBCU ball and stuff like that. A lot of fun. You get a lot of different perspectives. And yeah, like you said, it's not fluff. It's real in-depth stuff and what you're seeing from these teams. So yeah, it's exciting, man. It's I enjoy doing it, and that's the thing, man. I just like to talk ball.
Yeah, exactly. We get paid to do this. Isn't that great? Well, America's a great country.
It is. That it is.
Hey,
that
buddy,
it is.
It's always so good having you on, and look forward to talking with you tomorrow with B12 Mafia. And hey, if you ever need me on one of those Saturday night shows, I watch every game, so I'm usually pretty up to date.
I'll tell Coach I we'll shoot you over a link so you can hop on.
All right, buddy. I appreciate that. And hey, look forward to a great Bedlam. We can talk about it next week, my friend.
Okay, buddy. Have a good one. Thanks a lot for having me.
All right. Jason Watkins, always great having him on. You can watch him on about 1 million shows out there, and appreciate him joining us. I want to let you know about our great sponsors as well that keep us on for you. Karen Johnson at Insignia. You can get hold of her on Twitter as well at Karen Key Largo. I mean, if you got like your football, basketball, baseball, softball, tennis, track, whatever, your team needs some new uniforms. You want to get some shirts made up for shooting shirts. You want to get mom and dad, all the fans, some shirts, maybe sell them as a fundraiser, that kind of thing. Get hold of Karen, and we're going to get her on the show pretty soon to show off some stuff. And of course, up in the upper right-hand corner, you can see Greg's gear. She sets that up for us too. We'll have a lot more on that real soon. Just sent me two big packages, and we're going to have those, some of the shirts and hats and beanies and things like that at our Saturday tournament. So those of you who had, of course, if you want to play in any of our Saturday one-day tournaments, just $75. Corporate sponsors help us keep the cost down for you. Scott Hammer at Cruise Planners. He is the official vacation guy. He does it all. Yeah, he specializes in cruises, but he can get you any vacation. Scott Hammer at Cruise Planners, and then Helping Hands Ray of Sunshine, Mark and Cindy Welch. They have a great company who helps people stay in their homes longer so they don't have to go to assistance. Of course, my wife's been working for them almost 3 years. Great company to work for, a great company to help mom and dad out. I mean, if you live in town, yeah, you can go by every day and make sure mom and dad take their vitamins and their meds, and they get their rest and they don't fall, and they get good dinners, and you clean up a little bit. But if you live, 3-4 hours away or more, you can't do that, obviously. So you need somebody that you can trust, and they can, basically they'll be a companion, mom and dad, and help them out. And we appreciate them. Of course, corporate sponsors, DoorDash and Wendy's, keep me well fed and bring the food right to the door, which you got to love, right? Got to absolutely love that. Okay, let's see here. That's about going to do it. I'm glad to have Jason on anytime, of course, and he does such a great job on all his shows. Hope that you get to watch him tonight, because I will be, and he does a great job. Jump on the chat, and of course we go every day at 6 o'clock. Jump on our chat as well, and we'd love to hear anything you got, like we did from OK State, OKC, and 513 Bearcat today. Where's my Cougar guy? Where's my BYU guy? He's out today. Anyway, that's going to do it. Hey, have a great Thursday. We'll talk to you tomorrow.